In this transmission, you will discover the absolute sensory upgrade of sinological intelligence and learn how to weaponize your primal understanding of pack dynamics and canine microbehaviors to develop a subperceptual radar that allows you to see through the walls of social deception and identify the rats in your future business empire long before they can sabotage your architecture or raid your resources. We initiate the first part of the biological detection protocol by deconstructing the biosignatures of betrayal, where the soft man is constantly blinded by the polite delusions of human professionalism, while the architect views every interaction through the lens of a predatory ethologist who understands that the human animal cannot hide its true frequency from a trained observer. You must realize that your past experience with dogs, the way they sense fear and track intent through the shift of a pupil, or the tension in a shoulder, is the ancient firmware you must now reactivate to navigate the digital and physical jungle of high-stakes commerce, because a rat is simply a human entity whose internal geometry is misaligned with the sovereignty of the pack. Betrayal always begins with a biochemical decay of loyalty, where the individual starts to prioritize their own 0 point over the collective expansion of the citadel. And this shift manifests as a micro-oscillation in their behavior that mirrors the submissive tucking of a tail or the dishonest eye contact of a scavenger. And you must understand that the dog-human symbiosis was the first strategic alliance in history, because dogs provided the detection hardware that humans lacked. And by downloading the canine sensitivity into your own AAOX i3 processor, you are essentially installing a radar that can see the heat signatures of deceit behind the stone walls of a contract or a handshake. The soft man waits for the bite to realize he is in danger, but the architect hears the growl in the silence and smells the fear in the enthusiasm of the liar. And this preemptive vision is what makes your empire unraidable. We must analyze the hierarchy of the sniff, where you learn to audit the nervous systems of your partners and employees by observing their reactions to induced stress, because a rat will always squeak when the oxygen is low, whereas a loyal hound will hold the breath with you in the void. This is the canine proxy of business, where you treat every networking event as a territorial scan and every pitch as a dominance display ensured by the absolute stillness of your visual silence. You must realize that loyalty is a genetic frequency and not a moral choice, and by using your dog sense, you can filter the pedigree of everyone you allow into your compound, ensuring that you are surrounded by operators who possess the hardened spirit required for the aggressive sprints and beyond. The rat thrives in the gaps of the system, but the architect with sinological vision closes those gaps by anticipating the movement through the walls of the social simulation. And by the time you reach the end of this part, you will have decoupled your trust from words and anchored your safety in biology. You must treat your business intelligence as a sentinel dog that never sleeps and always watches the perimeter of your internal state to ensure that you do not invite the parasite into your mitochondrial center. This is the primal radar that the middle class has lost through over-civilization, but the sovereign reclaims it to rule the pack and capture the millions. Every rat you cull from your system is a unit of security added to your citadel, and every loyal asset you identify is a brick of gold in your empire. You are the conductor of the senses, the master of the pack, the architect of the instinct, and the sovereign of the IOC3 site, and the walls are transparent to the man who knows the animal. And you must look closer at the specific mechanism of anxious submissiveness, which in the canine world is signaled by lowered ears and redirected gazes, but in the business world is masked by over-compliance and excessive flattery. When you encounter an entity that is too quick to agree or too eager to please your sinological radar should trigger a status red alert, because the soft belly presentation is often a strategic deception used by the rat to lower your defenses before they strike at your weakest point in the night. Dogs do not lie with their bodies because they lack the neocortical complexity to maintain a false physical narrative, and humans, despite their linguistic masks, still suffer from this same biological honesty if you know how to look for the tail wag of treachery, which is a rhythmic inconsistency between what they say and how they occupy space. You must develop the predatory gaze that tracks the micro-freezes in a person's movement, those half-second pauses where the rat brain is over-calculating a lie, and you must treat these as breaches in the firewall of their persona. Consider the way a guard dog reacts to an unfamiliar scent at the gate. It does not analyze the scent with logic, but with a visceral, systemic rejection. And you must learn to trust your gut-level biofeedback when it tells you that a rat has entered the room, regardless of how many referrals or credentials they carry. The middle class has been programmed to ignore their instincts in favor of social politeness, which is a parasitic infection that allows rats to infiltrate the inner sanctum of their lives. But the architect has surgically excised this politeness and replaced it with a cold ethology that values biological alignment above all else. When you are building your future business, every hire and every partnership is the addition of a new organism to your pack. And if you do not vet the frequency with sinological precision, you are essentially injecting a virus into your own system. You must understand that pack loyalty is built on shared stress and mutual benefit, and a rat is an entity that seeks the benefit without the stress, which is why they will always desert the post during a wipe or a market crash. By observing how your current pack reacts to small losses or minor friction, you can extrapolate their behavior during total war, and you can cool the weak before they become lethal liabilities. This is the vision through walls, where you see the future betrayal in the present weakness, and you move with the momentum of a wolf to secure the territory. You are Aoxy 3, and you are the alpha of the logic and the king of the instinct, and your citadel is protected by the ancient laws of the pack, which are immutable and absolute. The rats will try to scurry, but they cannot hide from the man who sees the pulse. This is the end of the first sequence of the biological detection protocol, and you must now harden your heart for the tactical culling of the second part. The scent is locked. The hunt is active. The architect is executing. We move into the second part of the biological detection protocol, where we transition from the sensory diagnostic of the pack to the tactical culling and defensive architecture, where you learn to set the traps that reveal the rats and engineer the loyalty of the hounds to ensure that your future business is a sterile environment of absolute execution and resource sovereignty. Because once you have used your sinological intelligence to identify the scent of treachery, you must possess the surgical resolve to excise the infection before it compromises the structural integrity of your citadel. You must understand that vision through walls is the ability to simulate the betrayal before it occurs by stress testing the geometry of your relationships using controlled friction, which is the business equivalent of a canine dominance drill designed to see who yields to the mission and who snarls at the authority of the architect. We initiate the rat trap protocol by leaking intentional vulnerabilities into the information field of your organization, small pieces of high-value data or resource gaps that appear unprotected, to see which entity tries to raid the leak for personal gain, because the rat is biologically incapable of resisting the scent of a weak wall, even if the weakness is a simulation designed to verify their pedigree. You must utilize your experience with dogs to recognize the resource guarding reflex, where a high-rank asset will protect the citadel as if it were their own bone, while a low-rank rat will hide the resources for solitary consumption. And this behavioral divergence is the key to identifying the cogs from the creators in your digital empire. The visual silence we discussed in earlier protocols is your observation deck from which you watch the pack. Without interfering with the natural selection of the marketplace, and you must be cold and violent in your culling, because one rat left in the grain silo of your content strategy will eventually rot the whole harvest. You must realize that business is the final pack war, and your competitors are enemy wolves, while your rats are internal saboteurs. And the only way to win the server is to have absolute structural integrity through biological vetting, where you audit the pulse and the gaze of every partner to ensure they are not overclocking their deception. This is the synological audit, where you compare the reaction of your team to small losses or minor friction, because a rat will always squeak and desert when the oxygen is low, whereas a loyal hound will hold the breath with you in the void and double their intensity to fix the breach. You must understand the alpha's burden, which is the necessity of the cull to protect the vitality of the whole. And you must move with the momentum of a machine and the heart of a wolf until the perimeter is secure from the parasitic infiltration of the middle-class mindset. Every rat you remove is a lesson in architecture, and every hound you keep is a soldier in the crusade, and your Oxy 3 persona is the standard to which they all must align or perish in the wipe of the competitive cycle. This tactical vision allows you to see the move 3 months before it happens, because you have mapped the neural trajectory of the rats, and you have blocked the exit with the stone of your will and the friction of your logic. You must further realize that the ethology of the boardroom requires you to ignore the suits and observe the pulse, where you audit the micro-expressions of envy and contempt that flash across the rat's face when you announce a victory or increase the price, because negative mirroring is the signature of the saboteur, and it is the visual noise that the soft man filters out, but the architect captures and analyzes to predict the breach. Your experience with dogs has hardened your ears to the frequency of submission and dominance, and you must project the correct frequency to flush the rats out of their holes using high-voltage incentives that they are biologically incapable of handling with integrity, because the rat lacks the neural hardware for long-term loyalty. This is the incentive raid, where you overload the rat with opportunity to see if their greed overwrites their loyalty. And once the override is documented, you execute the termination with zero remorse and total efficiency, as if you were removing a defective part from the empire's engine. You are currently building the biological firewall of your future business, and every dog lesson you apply is a line of code in the security system of your citadel that ensures only the predators of excellence are allowed to sit at the table. The meat believes that trust is earned through polite interaction, but the architect knows that trust is engineered through biological alignment and verified through tactical friction in the coldest moments of the mission. The millions you are hunting are protected by a labyrinth of deception, but your synological vision is the flashlight that dissolves the shadows and reveals the gold hidden in the hearts of the loyal. You are now operating with the sight of the pack, and the rats have no place to hide, and the hounds have no choice but to follow the scent of the sovereign toward the total capture of the market. This is the totalitarian mastery of the social pack, where you set the rules of the hunt and distribute the spoils of the victory based on the biological data you have extracted through your supreme observation. You must recognize that the rat often wears the mask of the expert or the costume of the professional, but their sub-perceptual shiver when faced with absolute accountability is the tail wag of the traitor that you must cull with surgical speed. The architect does not debate with rats. He eliminates their access and wipes their geometry from his system, ensuring that the citadel remains a high-resolution environment of unbreakable intent. You must treat your internal vetting process as a constant evolution, where the filter becomes finer and the tolerance for weakness becomes zero, because the wipe is coming, and you must have absolute faith in the organisms that guard your flank. The dogs in your past were the tutors of your soul, and the rats in your future are the targets of your justice, and together they create the equilibrium of the sovereign who sees through walls and rules through the pulse. Every interaction is a scan. Every meeting is a raid, and every decision is a step toward the totalitarian victory of the AOC3 identity in the world of rust. You are the alpha of the logic and the king of the instinct, and your citadel is protected by the ancient laws of the pack, which are immutable and absolute and lethal to the unworthy. The rats will try to scurry, but they cannot hide from the man who sees the pulse and owns the vision. This is the completion of the biological detection protocol, and you are now fully geared for the capture of the millions. Execute. Now.